it's important to understand and get inside the mind of what's important to the leaders at your company. You know, at the end of the day, we're all working for businesses. Businesses have goals. They usually fall in one of two or three buckets. And if you can tie your work, your research, your building the shared understanding to something that the business cares about, something that is in the vernacular of the rest of the company, you know, showing up in conversations that happen outside of research, being relevant in those conversations and tying your work to what matters. That's the key to success. That's the key to showing value. That's the key to, you know, getting more momentum, getting more influence. It's not always the fun part though. I've met a lot of researchers who don't love that. I don't want to have to do that, but that is a really important part of the work.
So the first question is, what do you do to evangelize? And second is, how do you evangelize? How do you tie it to the value? You know, what can, you know, it's good for us to say, oh, let's evangelize, but how do you even do that?
Yeah. And a lot of times it's like, why do I have to do that? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to do that. I just want to do I just want to do interesting things and learn new things and make sense of interesting information. So I can give you a story that really like brought this to life for me in my career. So I'm tried and true qualitative researcher, empathy driven. I spent a lot of time with our customers obviously at UserTesting, and they're always advocating for this particular feature. And so I would, you know, because I was taking what I was hearing and sharing it back with our internal teams, I would share one-off stories. Oh, I talked to this customer and they asked for this, or I talked to this customer and they're considering another vendor because they offer this feature and we don't offer it. So it's all of these kind of one-off stories, right? We're great storytellers. We like to bring our customers to life kind of one at a time. It was years. I'm like, I can't hear our customers ask for this feature anymore. Like if I never have to hear this request again, I will be a happy person. I got to do something. I got to do something about this. Plus I was actually concerned, right, about being able to retain our customers at the end of the day.
Right.
So I would, you know, sit in executive staff meetings or even product leadership meetings and say, you know, hey, I talked to these 5 customers and they're all asking for this feature and here are their roles and here's how they would use it. And I was kind of getting into the nitty gritty. And it wasn't until I paired with our head of sales and customer success, and he said to me, why don't we look at all those customers that are asking and quantify it like in some meaningful way? So we went through the list and I attached you know, the how valuable of a customer they were to us, right? And then I went back and said, hey, this amount of revenue, this retention rate, these things are at risk if we don't build for what these customers are asking for. And it was like light bulb moment, because I was able to tie my storytelling and my qualitative work to something that made sense and was valuable to the business. And within a couple of months, and that was good enough for me because it was years of hearing it, within a couple of months, we had solved for that. And I will never forget that. I know there's turf wars. There's always been turf wars, right? What's market research? What's user research? What's product analytics? I am tired of those conversations. I don't really care about the definitions. What I do care about is teams and companies that are mature enough to take all of that goodness and harness it. Now, this requires oftentimes restructuring or a different way that companies are run. So not every company is going to have the freedom to do this. And that's a whole probably different conversation. But you could always start small. Build an alliance in the market research team or in marketing or in sales. Build an alliance in the customer support team. Find ways to, you know, build this broader narrative for your company. So I do think sense making of data, making connections with other folks in the company or teams in the company that have access to data. And then once you've made this broad sense of it, it's actually about regularly integrating new insight. So when I think about my career, when I first started, you know, I had a client and they hired us on an annual basis and we ran 3 or 4 usability studies for them a year in a lab where we looked at the key funnel for running their business, right? So they looked at it 4 times a year. With this shift in introduction of new technologies, and I'm not just talking about artificial intelligence, I think the growth of technology, even how we do things like usability testing or user testing, that has fundamentally changed. You can do that in 20 minutes. You don't have to take, you know, 3 weeks of planning and 2 days in a lab and 6 weeks of analysis to get to meaning, right? So this notion that there have been advancements in the field, mostly powered by technology, means that we have an opportunity to perhaps think about our value a little bit differently. So what I mean by that is traditionally we have been the people who are running the research. We are scheduling the sessions. We are recruiting or working with a recruiting partner. We are showing up and doing the research. We are spending time doing the analysis, likely together as a team. And we are kind of focused on the coordination of this, right? And by the way, that's if your company actually invests in and values this work, right? Because another part of the job that we also need to acknowledge is the evangelizing of the importance of doing this, where to integrate it into your, the workflow of the team. Just articulating and getting people to pay attention to what you might be delivering. The challenge with the introduction of all of these tools and platforms, as I mentioned, introduced incredible efficiency. So we no longer have to usually spend lots of time recruiting, spend lots of time in a lab, spend lots of time doing this deep level of analysis of the data. A lot of those things you can use technology to aid you in that process. This is one of the things I think about a lot as an educator, because I recognize that these technologies are available to folks, anybody who wants to practice. And so we focus a lot in our program around how do you use these platforms and tools in a very intentional and ethical and smart way. But also, you do have to understand the foundations before you can lean on, let's say, a partner, right? Whether that's a research assistant in person, or maybe you might be using another technology like ChatGPT. What I'm getting at is that there has been introduction and efficiencies that have brought us to a place where we don't have to spend as much time doing that work. We don't have to spend as much time collecting the data. I think as an industry, we've over-indexed on the collection of data. It's sort of like we get really wrapped around the axle around what's the perfect question we have to ask and who's the perfect person that we need to talk to. Yes, those things are important, but what's actually the most important thing is the data that you collect and what you actually do with it. If you collect a bunch of data, it just sits on a shelf, you're not really actually doing anything of value. And so I would love to think about the future for us as, a big part of our role is the curator of understanding. It's the communicator of understanding. It's building a shared understanding of who the customer is and who you're building your experiences for. That's one part of, I think there's, kind of 4 or 5 things that I think UX researchers really should focus on moving into this kind of next realm. But the first one being kind of the curator and the collector of data and the sense maker of it and the storyteller and the person who can kind of bring the rest of the team or the organization along.
Before I turn to take ourselves 15 years into the future, what is a UX researcher called? I knew you were going to
do this to me. You know what? I don't have a title for you. And I know that that's really disappointing. What I will say, though, is that the practice and the activities and the things that we do today as UX researchers are mission critical, and they will be part of at least the companies that are very well run and performing well. Whether or not we're called UX researchers, I don't have a crystal ball on that. My confidence level is actually kind of low. I just don't know what the alternative is.